Welcome to the Jaros Health Podcast, where we make it easy for you to better serve older adults through our content that informs, community that inspires, and courses that deliver.
Hey guys, Alyssa here with this month's Old Not Weak segment. And I wanted to discuss a recent statistic I ran across, which you might have seen posted on Instagram and Facebook. But it was from the position statement from the National Strength and Conditioning Association regarding older adults and resistance training. And in there, it stated that only 8.7% of people above the age of 75 are participating in weight training. And we all know the benefits. We've talked about it extensively in the group, on the podcast. We all know the benefit of external load on muscular strength, preventing frailty, preventing sarcopenia, those sorts of things. So, and to me, that's kind of alarming of only 8.7%. But if people haven't grown up exercising, they don't like to exercise, maybe they don't see the need to exercise. So it's kind of probably a mixed bag of reasons for that. But I wanted to kind of explore a little bit into how we can maybe improve that number and how some people have been able to encourage their patients, encourage community dwelling older adults to get into weight training. And there was a big push from CrossFit for a while on getting older adults into CrossFit gyms, starting the functional training that way. And then there's also obviously Christina Previtt with Stave Off, and there's been House Fit is also one, kind of a wellness center type deal for older adults. So I have a few opinions and some examples that maybe we could take these examples and kind of implement them in your own way, or use a few ideas to kind of implement or begin programs if you have that available to you. So first one's coming from Meg, who, from a home health side of things, says she convinces or asks the patients to set up a resistance training station in their home. So what she does is she asks family members or looks on local sites that are selling objects to find weights or dumbbells. And she said usually the patient's family is on board with purchasing these weights for the patient or finding a way to get weights to them. And then she also, if it's out of the question to purchase weights or to obtain weights somehow, she said she either fills a backpack with random household items or uses a saucepan and puts a few items in it and uses a scale to kind of weigh how heavy this object is. And then you can kind of manipulate the weight that way. And so then these patients are able to use these either weights or these handmade weights to continue a home exercise program with appropriate progression and intensity and those sorts of things. And she said that she's had pretty good success with that. Sometimes just bringing it up to patients, they may not realize, that you could just fill a backpack or put something in a saucepan. They might, think you have to get all of these weights and all this equipment when it's just pretty simple. I've used soup cans with patients, especially my frailer ladies. We've used random household objects. So you can get kind of creative. And if you show them, how to do these things initially in the treatment, then maybe it could help kind of maintain that throughout once they've been discharged and don't have, skilled services. So that's kind of one way, just kind of stepping out of the box and seeing if these patients are, especially, in a home health setting, if these patients are appropriate for weights and are able to do exercises with external load, then definitely kind of open their eyes to maybe other options other than weights. And then Laura was saying that she is piloting a functional strength and balance class in the community. So kind of bringing that functional movements like the squat, deadlift, those big things, into, for community dwelling older adults. So, and she really stressed that the message may have to go beyond just, we have to get moving, any physical activity is good, more of those general statements. So she wanted to use like gain framing conversation to help with matching patients' interests, saying, if you can lift this, then you're still able to lift your grandchildren, kind of thing. If you're able to do this, then, if you're able to squat, then you could still garden, or, things like that, kind of making it more patient-centered than just kind of the general statement of, all exercise is good, so just do any sort of exercise. That also goes along with knowing how to correctly do the exercise, which is the benefit from the strength and balance class, but then also, being introduced to these new movements, and because they may have a stereotype of what, these strength and balance classes are. And so if you kind of introduce some new movements or a new way to do things, then that might help kind of collect interest a little bit more that way. So you also want to, like she said, be able to kind of make it more patient-centered, find out what it is they want to do and run with it. And that might help, kind of getting a group of those statements onto the flyer or something if you were going to go down the community route, instead of, just making those general statements or maybe statistics that people may not respond to. Then another example is one that I experienced firsthand, and it kind of brings up so we talked kind of about the home health side, we talked kind of about the community side, and this one kind of addresses more of the ILF, ALF, that whole section. So when I was still in school, I did a practicum at an assisted living and an independent living. They were kind of combined on the same campus, but I mainly focused on the independent living. So they had some classes implemented already, some group classes, and they had pretty decent attendance, and they wanted to kind of revamp that a little bit. So we kind of we went more the functional route. I did. And I just experimented with quite a few things. Experimented with the circuit training idea, going for small bouts of time, and then kind of rotating in stations. And that seemed to go over fairly well. If you can find challenging stations. And so I would ask them, maybe after they do 1 or 2 rounds, how hard was that? And then you kind of progress from there. So I would even progress in the same class. If something was too easy, then you would just progress that station a little bit harder. Now, these people were pretty high functioning as well. So they had, then we did some competition type things where you have a partner and you're doing kind of like a relay, which that went over very well. And then just kind of like a 3-round, 5 sit-to-stands, 10 chair push-ups, that sort of thing. And so all of those ideas, and we noticed that the adherence was a lot better week to week, and it was a lot more consistent week to week. But then, so aside from the exercise classes, because most assisted living facilities or independent living facilities offer some sort of activity-based group class. And it's all kind of just about maybe mixing it up kind of in. The thing you have to be careful of is they may be hesitant at first to try something new. It might be scary. It might be, they don't know what to expect. So you do have to be a little bit careful with the way, you kind of word things, and you don't want to make it sound too intense. And so that was a little bit challenging, but I believe we just called it like a functional strengthening class, or something along the lines of including function in the word. And that kind of kept people interested. They also had an extensive personal training program. So what they did was they saw people in the assisted living or independent living, again, mainly independent living, on an outpatient basis for physical therapy. So they would do outpatient physical therapy, and then once they reached a certain point, once they reached all their goals, with skilled services, we were looking for something to, be able to discharge them to, so they can carry out what these principles that we had talked about. And so they had, it was a small gym, but they had basically the physical therapist would write out the exercise program and give it to the personal training or the exercise physiologist kind of that was available in the gym. And they had the gym staffed with at least one person throughout the day. And so they would take those exercise programs, make sure they knew what all the exercises were. And then the patient would almost schedule a time to come into the gym and be able to carry out that program. Now, most of them were independent with carrying out their home exercise programs, but there were some people that needed a little bit of assistance, and that was color coded by the color of their home exercise program. So whether it was yellow for independent, I believe it was green for independent, yellow for they might need a little bit of help, and red was you need to be with them the whole time. And so they would try to schedule to make sure that there weren't a couple of patients that had red papers in the same time frame just because they needed that much supervision. So one of the outlets was physical therapy discharges. The other outlet was they just offered free fall prevention screenings. And I think this was successful as well, because what they would do is if you were screened as a fall risk, we would give you interventions, exercises to do in the exercise room. And again, we do the same thing, write out a exercise program, hand it over to the people in the gym, and then they would get started. And I think that this was a little bit more successful than just saying, we have a gym, where they're given a program, they're told what to do, and they're in and out, they do their exercises and then go. And I mean, if you do first start out with that education on the benefits of strength training, benefits of preventing falls, making sure that they understand that exercise is important for longevity and management of chronic health conditions and all of those things that they may not exactly know. And if we show them, you can do that just by doing these few things with some weight, and then we'd go in and figure out, what weight they use and things like that. So it was a little bit more extensive, but they had mainly these two outlets of ways to get people into the weight room. And surprisingly, there were quite a few people who would, come in, do their home exercise program, and they kept it all in a file. So, I mean, there were probably, 30-ish people that would come in every week, every couple of days a week, and run through their program. And most older adults don't really respond well to change, and so they would come in and they would do their same home exercise program day after day and wouldn't think twice about it, but we would make sure that their external load was increased to increase the intensity and things like that. It was monitored that way. They would write down the weight that they did the day previous. But that, I think that was a way, And it was just a small gym. It wasn't anything fancy. You don't necessarily need something that's fancy. I know a lot of assisted living facilities and independent living facilities that have gorgeous gyms, and some have really small ones. But kind of the big thing is just kind of opening up opportunity, whether it is in the community, whether it is on a home health basis or in a facility. There are some options that we can kind of help promote this weight training kind of thing. You know, I was in a outpatient clinic that was attached to a YMCA. And so what we would do is, if the patient was, obviously if they were an outpatient, decently high functioning, then I had this patient who had Parkinson's disease, and I would take him over and I would show him some exercises and things to do with weights, and then he would come do the exercises on his own once he was cleared, you know, for independence. And I believe the YMCA even had a discounted rate if they were receiving physical therapy. They had kind of a connection there. So that's something too, if you're next to a facility, or if you're next to a gym, or that's available to you, maybe talk about working out a deal. Maybe, you know, they get a discounted rate or something, but we're bringing them more members, so you can kind of work that out that way. But if you come over and just show them what to do, or write down a program for them, people respond better when they are, especially with exercise, when they're told what to do instead of trying to figure things out on their own. So I'm definitely interested to hear any other ideas anyone has on, you know, kind of increasing the adherence to exercise, not only to exercise, but to weight training, because like I said, there's been extensive discussions on the benefits of strength training, and, you know, body weight training can typically only go so far. So maybe these higher level patients do need strength training to kind of maintain their level of function, prevent frailty and sarcopenia, all of those types of things. So if you have any ideas or come across, I would love to share them, or you can just share them in the group and we can kind of go from there, because I think the more ideas that are pushed out there, then they might click with someone, and then that someone can help, you know, even if it's just 10 to 15 people. Then if we can keep doing that, I mean, we can make a difference. And as physical therapists, or as occupational therapists, or whoever is listening to this episode, we are at the forefront of being able to make these changes with, you know, education and all of the knowledge we have, you know, exercise based and things like that, exercise prescription. And so we need to utilize that more than just skilled treatment. So if we can kind of share that with the community, with, you know, any sort of community outreach, partnering with the community center maybe, or a local gym, and maybe even holding a class in a local gym if they would be up for that. So there's lots of outlets we can do, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind to say, you know, how can I help increase the adherence with weight training? So exercise is obviously the first step, but then taking it, how can we take it that step further? Again, my name's Alyssa, and this is the Old Not Weak segment. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Jaros Health Podcast. Go to jaroshealth.com to get the show notes for this episode and find out how you can join the Jaros community for free. You'll get access to our private Facebook group and the weekly Jaros recap, where we share our favorite reads, podcasts, and any interesting conversations in the Jaros community that week. Once again, that's GEROS health.com. Thanks for listening.